Hi, today we will study about more of the basic concepts and terms that will introduce you to understanding the data around us. We shall start with the topics on data, information, and the sources of data. What is data? Data is a gathered body of facts. We can also describe data as the central thread of any activity. Remember that understanding the nature of data is the most fundamental or proper and effective use of statistical terms. In addition, data is often considered the building block of information systems. In other words, data refers to information collected as the result of experience, observation, or experiment. Examples of data can be anything, from census information collected by the government to surveys collected by an individual or by any organizations. Data can come from a variety of sources such as primary and secondary data. Let's see the difference between these two sources. Primary data uses surveys, experiments, or direct observations, while secondary data refers to the collection conducted by collecting information from a diverse source of documents or electronically stored information, census, and market studies. Secondary data is also used in data mining. Primary data, therefore, is data collected directly from the source of origin, while secondary data is data that has been collected from already compiled data. Now, let's go through more definitions, examples, advantage, and disadvantages for each. Let's start with the primary data. Primary data can also be defined as original data that has been collected specifically for the purpose in mind. Someone collected the data from the original source, has not been published yet, and is more reliable, authentic, and objective, has not been changed or altered by human beings, therefore, validity is the greatest. In other words, primary data is fresh data, collected for the first time by you or on your behalf for a specific purpose or design. Primary data can be obtained from different sources. One of these sources is survey. It is the most commonly used method in social sciences, management, marketing, and psychology to some extent and can be conducted in different methods. First method is questionnaire, second one is interview, and the third one is observation. In questionnaire, it is the most commonly used method in survey. Questionnaires are a list of questions for which the respondent gives answers. Questionnaires can be conducted via telephone, mail, live in a public area, on a road, or in any institute, through electronic mail or through fax and other methods. Next is the interview. It is a face-to-face conversation with the respondents. Interview is slow, expensive, and take people away from their regular jobs. But this allows in-depth questioning and follow-up questions. Interview can not only require the statements that interview speaks, but he can observe the body language, expressions, and other reactions to questions too. These things will also help us to make decisions about him or her. And at the same time, this enables the interview to draw conclusions about him or her easily. The next one is observations. Observation can be done while letting the observing person know that he is being observed or without letting him know. Observations can also be made in natural setting as well as in artificially created environment. Now, let's see what are the different advantages and disadvantages of primary data. Let us start with the advantages. First, data interpretation is better. Primary data helps in enhancing the authenticity, accuracy, and reliability of research. Second, targeted issues are addressed. Here, The researcher at their own will change the course of study whenever needed and choose the platform as is suited to one's requirement. Third, there is efficient spending of information. Since research carried out is goal-oriented and is based on first-hand information, therefore, there is high possibility of minimizing the wasting of resources. Fourth, we can see the decency of data. Fifth, it addresses specific research issues. Sixth, there is greater control because it is possible to capture the changes occurring in the course of time. Finally, since primary data is the fresh form of data that have not been collected and used before, hence, propriety issues will not be a problem. After having a look on the advantages, let us look on the disadvantages of primary data. First is high cost. A very high cost is involved in collecting data from primary sources. Use of manpower, surveys, tools, etc. involves very high cost. Second is time consuming. The procedure is more time consuming and hence accounts for huge amount of costs of assets. Also, a lot of time is required in collecting data from various primary sources. Third is inaccurate feedbacks. The outcome from research audience may not be always feasible. Fourth, more number of resources is required. It requires extensive research personnel who are skilled. Availability of skilled people for research work is also a big challenge in research study in any place, and it's required difficult to administer. Let's now look at the different definitions of secondary data. First, it is a data that has been already collected by and readily available from other sources, meaning the data have been collected by someone before the current needs of the researcher. Second, it is a data being reused from the primary data. And third, data are more quickly obtainable than the primary data. When compared to the primary data, secondary data can be collected easily with time and cost efficiency. Fourth, data can be obtained from many sources including literature, industry, surveys, compilations from computerized databases, and information systems, and computerizes mathematical models of environmental processes. Researchers usually use data with related reference and don't collect it from the field. Now, let's see the examples of secondary data. Secondary data can be classified broadly as published data sources, electronic data sources, and syndicated or media sources. Examples of published printed sources are books, periodicals, and other published materials, generally available in most of the libraries. Electronic data sources include e-journals, weblogs, general websites, and etc. There are some media sources as well, which we say are syndicated resources such as magazines, newspapers, and etc. Some relevant and authentic information can also be gathered from broadcast and print media. Aside from the academic researchers, the print and electronic media frequently conduct researches related to personal life, professional life, lifestyle, income status, and many other issues. Apart from daily newspapers, some magazines also provide a lot of information related to the current issues. Like the primary data, secondary data has its own advantages and disadvantages. The main advantage of the secondary data is that it is inexpensive because the sources already exist, so we don't need to spend time and money in collecting the data. The other advantages are easily accessible, immediately available, therefore the time spent on the study is considerably less than that of the studies used in primary data collection. Will provide essential background and help to clarify or refine research problems that are essential for literature review. It provides research method alternatives, and it also alerts the researcher to any potential difficulties. Regarding the disadvantages of secondary data, some are expensive, some are not immediately available, and takes time to define problem, sampling frame, method, and analysis. Some are not readily accessible, and it contains incomplete information. To put it briefly, the researcher has no control over the data collection pattern. That's why quality and accuracy of data may pose a problem. Secondary data can also be unreliable and created for a different purpose, and therefore may not fit the researcher's needs. Let me share with you now the importance of data and data collection. Data is one of the most important and vital aspects of any research studies. The concept of data has been around since the beginning of time. Every company runs their business based upon data. We collect data all the time for all sorts of daily activities. We do in order to answer questions that we have. Now, the principle is that data are essentials for making proper judgments and drawing proper conclusions about questions that we have. Another importance of data is that researchers conduct in different fields of study can be different in methodology, but every research is based on data, which is analyzed and interpreted to get information. We all know we can make better decisions if we have more information. We collect multiple observations in order to draw proper conclusions and make appropriate inferences. Lastly, data is the basic unit in statistical studies. Statistical information like census, population variables, health statistics, and other related studies are developed from data. Data are the evidence we use for inferences, judgments, conclusions, and etc. As we collect data, we like to calculate averages, minimums, maximums, and percentages. It means that we generate statistics from the data that we collect. For a non-technical person, the data and information may mean the same thing, but for a technical person or for a computer science student, it is very important to understand the technical difference between data and information. I'll try to explain each term so that you are able to understand things well. So let's start. One way to differentiate between them is by telling the that data are raw numbers that we capture according to some agreed standards, while information is a collection of data points. We can understand something about the thing being measured. Another way to differentiate the two terms is to say that data go through the client's current data, structure, and normalize the data, making sure that all things measured in the same way, while information refers to the data that have been recorded, classified, organized, related, or interpreted within the framework so that meaning emerges. In short, data is actually what is given as an input to the computer, which is in a processed form. The computer actually performs the processing and transforms the data into information. Moreover, we cannot make decisions on the basis of data, but we can definitely make decisions on the basis of information. I hope you enjoyed and understood this lesson, and thank you very much for watching.